Welcome to Rise to Lead, the podcast where heart-driven leaders come together to inspire and innovate. They will share actionable tips and insights that help you lead your team more successfully, advance your career or business as a leader, achieve greater impact, and experience deeper fulfillment. I'm your host, Regina Huber, guiding you through deep conversations about leadership that's rooted in service, freedom, and the desire to leave a positive mark on the world. Welcome to the show, this episode of Rise to Lead podcast. I'm delighted to introduce today's guest, Fong Chua from Canada. Welcome, Fong.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah, so I'm doing great. And how are you doing today? It's a different time of the day here. It's already afternoon where I am today. So
it's early morning, and it's always great seeing you, and it's always great being able to add value and speak with people. So thank you for having me.
well, thank you for being on. And I'm also very grateful for being on your show in the past. So thanks for that. So let me read your bio before we dive into our conversation today so people get to appreciate your impressive background, Fong, as I'm going to do that real quick. And then you're, of course, free to add anything you would like to add to this. Fong Chua is an entrepreneur, business strategist, real estate investor, speaker, and 3 times best-selling author. Congratulations. He has successfully unlocked many of his clients' potential, demonstrating how they can achieve more than they had ever thought possible. He has been able to inspire and bring to reality authors, entrepreneurs, and speakers, coming up with branding, marketing, positioning strategies that increase his clients' businesses and exposure, along with working on his clients' networking, relationship building, and public speaking skills. This is what Fong does best. You can also find Fong on his podcast, The Peak Potential Success Show, and weekly video series, Make More Mind Bites, and on his YouTube channel. Fong is a true leader in these areas, and I had the pleasure of meeting him through a speaker training that I was invited to attend by his co-host, Stacy, and this is a really, really wonderful experience. As I said before, in the meantime, I also have been on your podcast, Fong. So again, thanks for having me on. We had a wonderful conversation there as well. And because we had an amazing chat back then, and he is an amazing expert, I had to invite him. And Fong is also someone who is very, very generous. He's a very giving person, and I love this about leaders. So I wanted to introduce him to all the listeners today. There was no way around this. Again, welcome to this show, Fong.
Hey, thank you very much for having me. Like I said, it's always a joy speaking with you and also seeing you. And I guess this is payback for being on my show. After I put you on the spot answering all these questions, it's your turn to do it to me. So glad to be here.
Okay, let's dive right into the on-the-spot putting. First of all, we would like to know a little bit more about who Fong is, apart from the beautiful bio that I just read. In just a few sentences, Fong, tell us who you are, how you work with your clients. Maybe there's something quirky about you. Feel free to share that too. And then the part where you talk about working with your clients, I'm specifically interested in learning how it relates to leadership.
So I guess I'll start with being born and raised in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Taught to find a good job, being that job for the rest of my life kind of thing. And that's why I became an engineer. That's my first path. And in oil and gas in Alberta, it's purely based on oil and gas, that economy. So if oil goes up, we're happy. If oil goes down, we're sad. So that's it's kind of dangerous. But it's always all these cycles, right? So being in that industry in 2008, oil went down, everybody was sad, and that's when my company at the time went from, I think, 800 some plus employees down to 125 employees. And that's when my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, decided to go, hey, let's look at something else. What can we do outside of engineering if engineering doesn't work out? Picked up Rich Dad Poor Dad, and it kind of opened up this whole new world of real estate, business, speaking, entrepreneurship. And then so fast forward from there, been able to build up a real estate portfolio, had a few coaches working with me, been able to speak on different stages about my experience, wrote a few books, and then also be able to joint venture with a lot of people on real estate and also in different business collaborations and whatnot. And at the end, I've been able to start a podcast and have you on the show and all that great stuff. So that's a very short kind of Cole's Notes version of my origin story and where I started. And throughout that period of time, I realized, hey, this is where things happen. Being able to network, connect with people, build relationships, business, entrepreneurship, that's more exciting than sitting in front of your computer screen doing calculations all day. It's more fun to be out there, even though if you're looking at real estate that may or may not be prestigious or may or may not be run down and whatnot, it's still you're out there in the open, you're breathing fresh air, you're not stuck in a cubicle. So it was a lot of fun and realize, hey, even if let's say we continue with engineering or not, we still have something we could do that you could say it's a hobby or a path to a second career and all that great stuff. So that's why we went that route and started building that skill set. During that period of time, I also realized that you really need to be able to speak. If you can't speak, you can't build relationships. If you can't speak, you can't lead. If you can't speak, you can't negotiate deals and find different opportunities and all that kind of stuff. Hence, we started working on our speaking abilities, started working on our leadership qualities, and really honed in on those skills. And as our careers went off in the real estate and business realm, we realized how important those skill sets are and what most people don't realize going through school, going through their traditional paths, that what they're missing and why certain advancements are not given to them because of those skill sets not being honed. And during this period of time, I've been working with a lot of people who, yes, they are employees, yes, they are engineers, or they're working still their day-to-day jobs, but they're wondering, hey, how do I increase my skill set? How do I become more valuable? How do I become more noticed? And all those things comes back down to leadership, team building, relationship building, and speaking. So that's why I feel so passionate about this stuff because it's not taught in traditional schooling.
Mhm.
And when you open that world to people who's not engaged in that area for a long period of time or very often, they go, wow, I'm missing out on a lot. I wish I did this before. So it's really fun working with people in those areas.
I love this. A lot of it is also about self-leadership, isn't it?
Oh yeah, like
Okay.
the thing is, if you don't self-lead, if you can't show that you have the discipline, if you can't show that you can set your goals and actually achieve those goals, then who are you to tell other people or coach other people, hey, maybe try this, hey, maybe try that. But of course, we're all humans. That's why I still have my coaches who challenge me on a day-to-day basis. And yes, I have my own challenges too. But everybody learns from somebody. There's always somebody more experienced or less experienced than you, and therefore there's always somebody you can coach, and there's always somebody you can help, you can learn from as well.
Exactly. So it's not about perfectionism, it is about growth. Right? It's about growing every single day in the best way we can. And you would probably be pleased to hear that I wrote an article about the schooling and well, I call it the schooling system, just because of what you said, because we miss out in so many different areas in this schooling system. So sometimes I don't even want to call it an education system because we often find the most valuable education outside of school by finding it ourselves, right? By uncovering our needs or desires in terms of our own growth. So yes, I wrote this article about what, in my opinion, is all missing
So very, yes,
in school education.
so very, very true. You said that about perfectionism. I mean, if you're
Yeah.
trying to do something perfect, you're not even gonna try at all. You're always going to second guess yourself. You're going to be stopped. You're going to stop yourself from pursuing something because you're always going to find something that's missing. You're always going to find something that's not perfect. I mean, I've worked with a lot of people on their presentations, on their speeches, and they keep on procrastinating, booking a time to practice that speech or booking a time to schedule that speech or whatever it is because it's not perfect. Well, guess what? By the time it's perfect, you've already lost out on all those other opportunities on practicing and keeping your skills sharp and going through those repetitions of actually presenting it to people that you've missed out on learning opportunities and you're not growing. So perfectionism
Yes.
doesn't exist. And therefore, for people like I'm sure for yourself, you've thought about a long time before launching and announcing to people that you're going to do a podcast. But I'm pretty sure you did not say, hey, this podcast has to be pristine and perfect before it launches. Because if you do that, it's never going to launch.
Exactly. Definitely not. And I definitely didn't wait to speak until I was perfect. I did speaking engagements, or rather, I actually had my own events where I was free to practice and experiment as I wanted in a way. And people loved it just because it was more from the heart. It wasn't perfect for sure. It was not properly structured even at the time. I was still learning, but I had to get the practice somewhere. And I had to put myself out there. I had to gain the confidence and also experiment with messaging. What works, what doesn't work. The same for networking, right? We need to experiment so that we can figure out what works best for us. So that's very well said. And I often also say perfectionism or perfection is that carrot that's dangling in front of us and it's always going away, right? We're running after it all the time. So we never get there. Very well said. Thank you for that. Tell us now why you're so passionate about heart-centered leadership and what that means in your world. What does heart-centered leadership mean to you? What do you understand by that?
Well, when I hear heart-centered, that would be everybody's center. Whether it's my own or the people I'm working with or the people I'm leading, it needs to be you have to care about what other people's goals are. You have to care about what other people's strengths and weaknesses are. If you just go out there and go, hey, do this, this, and this, and do that, this, whatever, then you're not really listening and you're not really leading. It's more like dictating as to what they need to do. And when you're heart-centered, you realize that you yourself are not perfect. Yes,
Mhm.
you are there to maybe lead a group of people, but you're also there to listen and build that team so that the team can work together and be successful in their goals. But not just the whole overall team goal, but also the individual goals too. So when it comes to heart-centered, for myself, one, I need to make sure that, okay, why am I doing this? Why am I leading this? Why is this project important to me? But I also have to sit down with people one-on-one, obviously, depending how big teams are, one-on-one to find out, okay, what is their goals? Why are they doing this? Why are they here? And really understand their perspective of things, what their strengths and weaknesses are, so that they are placed in the perfect spots to succeed, but not only just to succeed, but also still challenging enough for them to grow so that there's some benefits to them, not just from a project perspective, but from a skill set and mental position too. So that's what I think heart leadership is, or heart-centered leadership is that everybody grows in the same time as accomplishing a goal, which is the project.
Yes, and at the heart of that, or at the core of it, is the good intention,
Mhm.
right? So we do things the best we can as leaders for the people we want to lead or we're supposed to lead. I love that you focused it on recognizing people's aspirations, their desires, and their challenges, right? Because it's not just about the team goals, as you said, it's also about the individual's goals. And oftentimes we don't listen enough to those individual aspirations, to those, to, well, it's sometimes also really hard, right? Because now in this virtual setting in which many people work nowadays and with big teams, you said it depends on the size of the team, whether that's even possible. It can be challenging to have those one-on-one conversations often enough But I think we can also actually gain a lot of time back if we do. So it's definitely not a waste of time. Just like team bonding exercises, we or like story sharing. I call it story sharing instead of storytelling oftentimes because I think it just sounds nicer that we share who we are or we share other stories, other people's stories, right? But so oftentimes you think these take up too much time, but that's not really true because we get so much value back from it, and it saves us conflict resolution time. It saves us correcting mistakes time, all these different things that we have to deal with when we do not do those one-on-one conversations.
Mm. Yeah, very, very true. Like for instance, if it's a really big group, you can
Mhm.
always assign mini groups, right?
Mhm.
And have other leaders within that group to then do the one-on-ones and then talk to those people afterwards. You could always have an open door policy and encourage people to come and speak with you if they have anything on their minds and all that kind of stuff. So there's always a way of being able to connect with people either on a one-on-one basis or on a one-on-many basis, but still keep your options open and your doors open to everybody to who has an opinion, who has a thought, who has a aspiration to share, because that openness showcases what kind of leadership you want to showcase. Because if you're closed door and you're like, no, I don't want to speak about it, I don't want to talk about it, it's my way or no other way, then people are going to gravitate to, okay, well, let's just keep our mouth shut and do what they tell us to do, and the morale is going to be low. So that openness is very, very important. You talked about team building. Lots of people are like I know a lot of people go, oh, what? Company's doing a team building event? What? We're going and like going on a hike on this team building event. And there's lots of moaning and groaning and whatnot. And there's a lot of people who don't show up to those things. But the thing is, in those events, it's where bonds are formed. It's
Mhm.
where you get to know people outside of your workspace or outside of the project space or outside of the team space, even from an athletics perspective. And you get to know people, the people from different perspectives. You find out their hobbies, you find out their interests, you find out commonalities, and then you build a friendship outside of the main purpose why you met together. By
Yeah.
doing that, you start going, hey, I like this person, or yes, I would fight for this person, or yeah, I would go the extra step to work harder and all that kind of stuff because you don't want to see them fail, and you might want to help each other out and all that kind of stuff. And that's why a lot of championship athletic teams, sports teams, they do all those. Hey, they have this Vegas trip, or they have this other trip to sons and dads trips and all that kind of stuff to make those bonds because they know that when they go to in the playoffs and they're fighting for that championship, and there's one player in the boards getting all banged up and whatnot, there's going to be a whole bunch of other teammates coming in for the rescue or just sticking up for them because of that bond, because of the relationship. And championships teams, what you hear most is that there's this bond, there's this relationship, there's this friendship, there's this brotherhood in that team
Mhm.
because of what they've gone through. So, and it lasts for years because there's always these 30-year anniversaries or 40-year anniversaries of teams and championships teams. It's because of those relationships that was born. And that's why it's so important to build those relationships, even though if it's outside of the common goal.
Yes, wow, yeah, very true. It also increases the understanding of each other. If I get to know a different facet of who you are instead of just the narrow synopsis of what your job is about or how you show up in a formal meeting maybe, then I get to know you on a completely different level, and it increases my understanding for you and therefore also my compassion for you when things maybe don't go so well. And that's
Exactly. And
an automatic human thing.
right. And on the a non-traditional sense, like for instance, I talked about being in real estate, and people in the real estate space, they've heard about the power team many, many times.
Mhm.
And that power team can consist of whichever members you think is required for you to succeed in real estate and developments and all that kind of stuff. So for me, when we started, I had my lawyer, I had my mortgage broker, my insurance broker, my what was it? My realtor, all these people. And I formed this team that one, they did not know each other to begin with. But two, I needed to make sure they did know each other so that they can work together when I'm not there. So therefore, we hosted like dinner events, we hosted special activity events on a yearly basis, bringing them back so that they get to know each other and they get to help each other, they get to know each other, so that when there's a deal that I may or may not have brought it to the table, but somebody else brought it, they still want to work together on it because there's that bond that's formed. So even from a non-traditional sense of athletes and sports teams and whatnot, you can form a really, really effective power team, building that team together because they have relationships with each other now, in this sense that it's more effective and everybody helps each other out. And it's beneficial to everybody. It's a win-win.
I like that, the power team. I love it. Really good. Yes, and of course, a big word here is trust, a very important central word in this context. You build trust among these people, right, of your power team, so that they know they can rely on each other.
Exactly. And one of the things is when it comes to trust, yes, it's very, very, it takes a very, very long time to build that trust.
Mhm.
And it could take like a split second to lose that trust. And that usually comes with a mistake or something that was done incorrectly or negligence or whatever it is. But one of the most powerful things that a person can do when something does come up like that is to admit to it. Admit to it, face up, and apologize. Well, if you're able to do that, it goes a long way of rebuilding that trust again. And what's very common is that people don't do that. And when people
Mhm.
don't do that, that's when you start burning bridges and word gets around. Uh, in these spaces, it's fairly small. People know each other. And if word gets around, it's hard to build new teams. It's hard to get those relationships going again. So therefore, if anything does happen that's not going your way or did not go according to plan, own up to it, fess up to it, apologize. What can you do different? And people respect that. I find that people respect that because they know, well, wow, you have the courage of stepping up and admitting to it. What are you going to do differently? And you're going to find that people are more acceptable to that and allowing people to grow that way too.
Yeah, it is the attitude of a leader. Because when oftentimes leaders think they cannot afford to do that, but that's actually not true, because we expect leaders to admit to their mistakes or shortcomings or whatever it is in each case, and then to really try and do it better next time and find a way to do it better. And we expect them to be an example for all of us. So if they don't do it, then we might not do it, right? Because we might be afraid of doing it too. And if they give us that example of, okay, it's okay to make a mistake as long as we can correct it together. And I think that's very powerful. So um, who are your typical clients for team building, Fong? Are most of
Well,
them entrepreneurs or people in corporate or some other organization?
usually entrepreneurs. So
Mhm.
from a team building perspective, most of my clients are in that space of the real estate stuff. So how do you build that power team up? How do you build those relationships up? What are ways of getting everybody together? What are ways of adding value to each other? And those are the things that I usually work on, helping people come up with ideas, helping people come up with different strategies, and finding right people for your team. I remember when I was building up my power team, I think I had maybe 6 or 7 interviews lined up for realtors, 45 minutes each. We sat at a Starbucks and I was there for the whole day. Realtor after realtor after realtor after realtor, just to see which one is right, going through like an interview process. And then after that, doing that for mortgage brokers, doing that for lawyers. And then eventually when we believe we had the right mix, we built those relationships over a few months and then brought them all together to meet each other and whatnot. And then if things don't work out, we might switch people in and out. But it's one of those things that's very important that everybody needs to work well together. Because if they don't work well together, not only is it potentially my deals, but other people's deals too, because everybody's hanging on each other for their expertise. And without their expertise, you can't move the extra step. That's why they're in there. That's why they're an important part of the team. So in a different scenario, corporate building and all that kind of stuff, everybody is there because they have a skill set. And if their skill set isn't able to be effectively utilized, then it's a waste of time for everybody.
Exactly. And that's also why it is important to fix performance issues, because if not, the entire rest of the team suffers. I have seen this over and over. And again, if leaders do not face up to the challenge of addressing this, and they don't, because they don't like to have those, what we call oftentimes difficult conversations, then everybody misses out or everybody suffers. And that's not a good thing, of course. What's really, really important here is something that you mentioned earlier, Fong, is also the courage to address difficult situations, difficult conversations. That's what leaders are for in their roles, in a way, right? Because we expect it from them. It's not always easy, but it needs to be done. So your typical clients then for team building are in real estate. And how do you, can you give us some examples of how you work with them? Or maybe some typical challenges they have and what they come to for you, to you, sorry.
Well, usually it's like, for instance, if I'm working with a client of mine who's in real estate, I
Yes.
basically go, okay, you have to build your team this way. How do you
Mhm.
find these people for your team? How do you put them together? How do you make sure that everybody is adding value to each other? And adding the mindset of adding value to each other is very, very important. If everybody is there just waiting for the next deal or just waiting for somebody to refer somebody to them, then that doesn't work. Everybody is always adding value to each other, finding ways of building that network, building that group up, either from a financial standpoint or a relationship standpoint. It's always value add, value add, value add. And certain things, for instance, you could do events together. You could go and watch sporting events together, or you could go and celebrate certain wins together. Like, for instance, if you get a real estate deal that's done, get together, have a celebration, go bowling, whatever it is that makes everybody happy, kind of thing, right? So a lot of that, like we've seen this a lot in corporate worlds where they do like corporate team building, putting them into watching movies together, doing camp building together and whatnot. So there's lots of different activities that people can do to build those relationships, but always being able to keep that communication going on a consistent basis. Because if you don't talk to somebody in your team for a long period of time, then that relationship starts to dwindle out as well. So keeping that in mind is very, very important. So it's really just keeping your mind surrounded with the people that's in your team and adding value on a consistent basis is the major thing that people has to keep in mind.
Right. Yeah, I organized quite a few of those events myself in the past while at BCG. So I did some dance events for those who wanted to try maybe dancing, because I just love dancing. So that's, of course, pretty obvious to do for me. But then we also did talent shows in the office. Like we had some people exhibit their paintings, other people were dancing, other people were singing. We had one Friday of really artistic events, and it didn't have to be exactly performing arts or painting or anything like that. It could be something completely different as well, but we just happened to have most of that. So that was really, really fun. We saw a whole other side of everyone during those days, and
Oh
they
yeah,
got to shine outside of their work, because BCG is a very intense workplace. It's it's there's a lot of time pressure oftentimes,
mm,
and then people are under that pressure a lot, and all of a sudden it's a completely different the same office becomes a completely different environment, and you can shine in a completely different way than in your daily work. I think that was a really beautiful experience. So thanks for bringing that up.
Even stuff like escape rooms are great. Escape rooms, there's
Huh?
different versions of like Amazing Race things that people can do,
Yeah.
that people can sign up for. That's always even going for a like one of those marathons or half marathons and have the whole group there running together, walking together, whatever it is. Not only is it healthy, it's team building. Plus, you may be running for a cause too, which is good too.
Mhm.
So it's one of those things that you could bring people together outside of the main group or the main project and kind of yeah, build that relationship.
Yeah. Talking about causes, we once also cleaned up a San Francisco park. That was a cause we worked on. That was fun too, actually. Okay, yes. Would you like to add anything around team building that we haven't mentioned? That and how do you guide your clients then to address specific challenges? Would you like to give us another example for that?
Well, it comes to challenges for my clients, a lot of them is it happens in the mind. I find that a lot of my clients, when they come up with challenges or questions, it has to do with, well, wouldn't they think this? Or wouldn't you say
Mhm.
that they are going to perceive me this way? And the biggest thing that I usually advise is that, hey, assuming never gets you anywhere good. So you don't know where they're coming from. You don't know what people are thinking. So don't assume that. You could potentially put that thought somewhere so that you're prepared for it if it happens. But from my experience, a lot of things that we assume and the worst case scenarios that we think usually doesn't happen. And we lose a lot of sleep. We lose a lot of time. We lose a lot of anxiety because of what we think may happen that usually doesn't come to fruition. And as leaders, what we want to do is be able to attack those challenges, face them, and recognize that each one of those challenges are learning experiences. Each one of those experiences are an opportunity for you to gain some benefit or add benefit to other people. There's always a positive spin to anything that we do. There's always a positive spin towards any decision that we make. So therefore, it's never a waste of time as long as we're growing somewhere. As long as we're benefiting somewhere, whether it's us or somebody else, there's always something that's working in the positive light. So that's what I usually do when it comes to my clients' challenges is come up with different perspectives as to, okay, how do we look at this from a good standpoint? How do we look at this from a opportunity standpoint? And by working that out, it usually allows them to face those challenges with a little bit more confidence, a little bit more surety so that they're able to attack it more successfully.
Yes, and creatively, right? Sometimes we need to not just think outside the box, but throw the entire box out to get to the best result.
Well, also like that saying about think outside the box. Well, how do you think outside the box when the ideas, the creativity, and all the different opportunities are written on the outside of your box,
Yeah,
and when
exactly.
it's hard to see that, and that's why it's always great to talk with fellow employees or fellow consultants or friends or whatever, your coaches, your mentors, because they're the people that's been there, they've done that, they've been in that box that you've been in. They've grown out, not grown out of that box. They've grown and expanded that box so that box is on top of your box, but they can see the outside of your box. So
Mm.
they can actually tell you, okay, this is what may or may not happen. Here are the options. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a great image to use as well. I like that. Okay, well, yeah, talk to us a little bit more about your books.
Well, with the book stuff, for me, it was some is one of those challenges that I go, hey, I can't do this. It's never gonna happen. Who am I to write a book? And it was my coaches that go, hey, why don't you think you write that book? Everybody who has a message, who has a voice can write that book. And therefore it set me on this path. Okay, maybe there is an opportunity for me. So really I started writing one book and quickly realizing that that one book was too big, too thick. And this is a common issue for a lot of my clients is that first they go, I don't have enough content. And once they start writing, they realize they have too much content. So for me in that first year, we had, I think, 3 books come out and all in different areas, from real estate to mindset to speaking to business strategies and branding. So different books for different topics, different scenarios, and from there, basically utilizes the books to build our platform. So been a lot of fun writing those books, and it's been a lot of fun helping people write books too. So it's a great way of expanding your exposure, and it's a great way to increase your credibility, and that's why it's something I think is very important for people to have.
Yes, and I love that you also help other people writing their books so generously, because I actually was also part of a short book program that you did, and you invited some of the speaking program participants to experience this, which was really, really wonderful. I got a lot of value from it, and I'm currently also in the process of hopefully finishing soon my second book. And I can totally relate to what you just shared. I wanted to pack a lot of what I'm writing in my second book originally into my first book, which I wrote in 2016, quite a while ago, but it didn't really fit there. It was supposed to be a completely different book. My first book is called Speak Up, Stand Out, and Shine. So it's more about techniques, tips about how to feel more comfortable before you go into a speaking situation. This new book is completely different. It's about my life and what I've learned in terms of leadership and life lessons. So they didn't really quite fit together at the time. And I had to go through the process of writing a whole portion of the book, not in vain, as you said earlier, it was not a waste or a waste of time, but to reuse it later. Even though I don't even reuse the exact same text, I use the same ideas that I had written down, and much more, of course, because in the meantime, so much has happened. Like every year, I have new stories.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I can totally relate to what you said about
e-
that.
Everybody grows, everybody has new stories to share, and therefore if you feel that you don't have, let's say if you don't have enough for a second book, which I can almost guarantee that everybody has 2 or 3 books in them, and you could always add a chapter to your
Mhm.
first book and re-release it, right? You could keep on
Mm.
building that volume 1, volume 2, edition 1, edition 2, whatever it is. And there's always way of incorporating new stories. There's always ways of coming up with new content and recycling content in a different perspective
Mhm.
is also very important too, because how often do we watch movie actors go back and talk about their time on a movie set or their time on a television series and wanting to hear what their stories were and how that story is different from when they were actually on it. Same with all of us. We could recycle the same story from our current perspective and give our current assessment as to how that went. Why do we feel that way? Why do we feel this way now? What made us change? What made us grow? And
Mhm.
that could be a whole new book, a whole new different content. So there's always ways of putting that together. And for lots of people out there who goes, I don't have enough content. Here, if you can speak for an hour and a half about any topic, then you have a book in hand already.
Yeah, that's a great statement. I love it. So, listeners, if you don't have a book but you want to write one, now you got it. Now you know how. Okay. We have been talking for a long time. It's been really insightful. I have enjoyed this conversation very, very much. We're getting toward the end of our set time frame a little bit. Maybe we can have another, because we have so much content, right, Tom? We can maybe do another episode in the future. But what I wanted to also ask you is, where can people find you?
Well, everybody can find me on Facebook, Fong Chua. You can find me on my website, fongchua.com, and of course my YouTube channel, which is Your Area TV. So all my content's there. You can find lots of great stuff there. My podcast is also on there as well. So yeah.
Yeah, people use all those free resources. Check them out. YouTube videos are amazing free resources. And of course, I'm also going to post all the links in the description to this episode.
Cool.
Yes, so thank you so much again. Any last words of wisdom or something you'd like to add that we haven't really talked about yet that absolutely needs to be shared right now?
Words of wisdom. I usually end with this by saying that everything that you ever want to achieve or accomplish has been done in one shape or form. So go out there and ask somebody who's been there and done it. Even if it wasn't successful, you can learn as to how they failed and how you can learn from that. So always go out, ask questions, find people, and learn from people. Don't be afraid to ask.
Great, and then do it your way. Thanks for sharing that. Everyone listening, thank you so much for being with us today here on this episode. Thank you again, Fong, for sharing your wisdom, your inspiration, and your tips with us. Very, very valuable. Always a pleasure speaking and co-inspiring with you. And yeah, I'm saying bye for now. Stay tuned for the next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Rise to Lead. Keep shining your light, standing up for what's right, and inspiring others to step into their brilliance. If you like this episode, please give it a 5-star rating and subscribe to the Rise to Lead podcast on your preferred podcast app. Until next time, it's Regina Huber, and in the meantime, remember to rise to lead.